Hey y'all, I'm Lauren. Welcome to Cantina Cast. Today is the first day that I'm going to be starting to cover Legends. So what I'm going to be doing for the foreseeable future is that whenever we have a space in between new releases coming out, I'm going to start getting to Legends during that time. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to start with the essential Legends re-releases that Disney has been putting out recently with the new covers and all that. I'm starting with those just because for people who are new to Legends, sometimes it kind of helps to just like have a starting place. So for now, I'm going to be sticking to those, but we'll see what the future holds. But I do want to say that if you have a certain book that is on that list that you want me to get to sooner rather than later, let me know in the comments if you have one, or also you can message me on Instagram, which is Lauren Covers Star Wars, which is just all one word. And the ones that people are asking for, I'll prioritize. Like, I know that Jonesy requested Republic Commando series, so that one's going to be higher up on the list soon, too. And if you're brand new to Legends, or if you're new to the Star Wars books, what Legends is it's the books that came out before Disney purchased Lucasfilm. So think about Legends as like an alternate universe. So they're not canon, but they're still really great stories, and a lot of them are still worth reading because there's some canon stuff that did come out of Legends, and also they're just great stories too. So even though they're not canon, like, you can still get a lot of enjoyment out of them, and especially some really cool lore too. And if you have a certain book that you want me to read, don't worry about if I've already read it before. Like, some of these are going to be rereads for me, but they're still worth covering and revisiting because some of them it's been a while since I've read, and some of them are first time reads too. Like the one that I'm going to be talking about today was a first time read, and now I can't believe I didn't read it sooner because it was so good. So let's go ahead and get into it. So today I'm going to be talking about Darth Maul Shadow Hunter by Michael Reaves. First, I'm going to start talking about just like my general thoughts, kind of like general things you need to know that aren't spoilery, and then after I talk about that, I'll let you know once I start talking plot, just so that way if you haven't read this one and you want to, then I'm not going to like ruin everything that happens for you. So the first thing to know about this book is it takes place right before the Phantom Menace. And I mean right before, like we're talking days before. The end of this book, it backs right up to like right before the movie starts. So if you like the Phantom Menace, if you like the prequels, if you like Darth Maul, this is going to be a good one. I mean, even just for that reason alone, I really enjoyed it because Phantom Menace is one of my favorite Star Wars movies. So anything that's like surrounding that time, I'm pretty much automatically going to like, I'm not going to lie. And so the backstory that we're dealing with is one of the Neimoidians that works for Sidious has suddenly left. And it's pretty obvious why. They're planning this blockade that's going to be happening, the blockade of Naboo. And this guy decides that he wants to sell the information to the highest bidder. And so once he leaves and Sidious notices that he's gone, he asks Darth Maul to track him down and kill him and kill anybody who he might have sold the information to. So the people that we're following in this book are Maul, of course, as well as Half Manchar, that's the Neimoidian that is going to sell the information. We also have Lorn Pavin, who is an information broker, and we have Jedi Padawan Darsha Asat, she's going to cross paths with Lorn later on. And we also have Lorn's droid I-5. And so those are like our main characters that we're following. We do have a sprinkle of some other points of view at certain parts in the book as well, which I'll get into later, but these are going to be like our main people. The main idea of the book is that Maul is chasing Lorn, Darsha, and I-5 through the lower levels of Coruscant. Oh, my cat just decided to join. We'll see if he decides to be good. He's chasing them through... Nope, he's not going to be good. He's already gone. He's chasing them through the lower levels of Coruscant. And as this is going on, they're encountering various obstacles. Crazy stuff is happening. Their lives are in danger. All of that kind of stuff. You know, the lower levels of Coruscant, I mean, it's like the Wild West down there. And that's one thing that this book kind of reminded me of, is how vast Coruscant is and how this place is just crazy. Like, there's, a huge class difference between the upper levels and the lower levels. There's parts in this book where it's like they are trying to get to the upper levels, and it's like way harder to get to the upper levels than you would initially think just based on watching the movies. So this book goes into a lot of that stuff, which is pretty interesting. In that way, parts of this book did kind of remind me of, you know how like in comedy, it's like a pretty common trope where like it'll be two characters who hate each other that are like lost in a city for a night and like they just keep encountering like various crazy stuff. That parts of this book kind of felt like that. Only it was like a way more serious version of that and like higher stakes because Darth Maul wants to kill them. But parts of it did make me think of that. Something else to keep in mind too is if you read Convergence, which is the most recent adult book, the most recent adult novel from High Republic that came out near Thanksgiving. If you read that and if you liked parts of the dynamic between Axel Greylark and Gela Natai, if that's something that you want more of, I think you'll like this book. I'm hesitating to say more because I don't want to accidentally spoil Convergence for anybody that hasn't gotten to it yet, but Axel Greylark was my favorite character in Convergence, and there were parts of his character that I kind of wanted more of, and I feel like Lorne Pavin is a character who kind of like satisfied that for me. So what I'm saying is if you like a scoundrel with a heart of gold, you should read this book. Something else that's good about this book too is if you like the prequels and if you like Darth Maul and you're looking for like an entry point into Legends, this could be a good option for you. It's not that type of book where like you need a whole bunch of background to know what's going on. You could just be familiar with the films and you will probably have a great time reading this book. Keep in mind, if you are new to the books, that this book is not canon because it's Legends, so it's alternate universe. But it's still, I had so much fun reading it. It was a page turner at parts. There were parts that got me emotionally, which I will wait to talk about until later because that's spoilers. But yeah, I mean, it was just like, I just had the best time reading it, honestly. Okay, so now I'm going to start getting into those details. So if you don't want to know spoilers of what happens in this book, turn back now. This is your warning. Okay, so first we start off, the book opens with Darth Sidious noticing that Monchar has decided to leave. He just disappears one day because he's going to go sell the information. So Sidious, of course, is unhappy about this. All of his plans that he's worked so hard for are about to go down the toilet if this Neimoidian succeeds in selling the information that a blockade of Naboo is about to happen and there's a Sith behind it. So he sends Darth Maul to go kill Monchar and anybody that he might have sold the information to. At the same time, we have Newt Gunray and the rest of the Trade Federation. They're absolutely terrified of Sidious, and for good reason, obviously. And of course, Newt Gunray is terrified of Sidious, so he doesn't want to tell him that we have someone that's, you know, we have a leak, because he's scared of like what the punishment is going to be. So what he's trying to do is he hires his own bounty hunter to go track down Monchar and whoever else needs to be tracked down. But he tries to do this without telling Sidious, but Sidious knows the whole time that something's going on, and Maul's already on it too. So Monchar is holed up in Coruscant hiding out, and he's preparing to sell the information. And the reason that he did this, even though he's just as terrified of Sidious as anybody else is because even though he's scared, he feels like the potential for the money that he could make is just so great that it was kind of like an opportunity that he couldn't pass up. He hears about Lorne Pavin, who is gonna be a pretty good lead for someone who will probably pay him a lot of money for the information. And so he's planning on selling it to him. And Lorne he's like a rogue type of guy who he is making his life in the lower levels of Coruscant. And he has a droid, I-5, who he views as an equal to him. And it's pretty obvious from the start that he cannot stand Jedi. And he'll go on a lecture to anybody who will listen about how the Jedi are like self-serving and stuck up and all of that. So like you can tell that somewhere in this guy's past, there was something that happened with the Jedi for him to have this much of a grudge against them. And so when Lorne goes to meet Monchar to get the information from him, Maul is also going to the same place. So Maul gets there right before Lorne does. He sees the evidence of the lightsaber, puts it together that this was a Sith that did this, and that really scares him. Because he's like, At this point, you know, this isn't just like dealing with someone from the criminal underworld. Like a Sith is a whole nother level. So that scares him. And he is like, let's get rid of this holocron. But I-5 kind of talks some sense to him and is like, it's a little late for that. Like, this Sith is going to be on our tail no matter what. So, like, best thing we can do is sell the holocron, get the money to get off planet. And they really need to get off planet for multiple reasons. Not only to get away from the Sith, but also because they committed bank fraud in order to secure the funds to purchase the holocron from Mon Char anyway. They've got themselves into some trouble in multiple different ways. Once Maul kills Mon Char and the bounty hunter that was also tracking Mon Char that the Trade Federation had hired, once he gets rid of both of them, he starts following Lorn to try to get the holocron from him. In this book with Maul, we do see like multiple scenes of him training obsessively. He's obsessed with killing the Jedi. All he wants to do is serve Sidious. It's very typical of what we would expect from Maul. His arrogance is also on display as well. Like, he frequently gets frustrated in this book because he feels like the people that Sidious is sending him after are not worthy opponents of him, which is kind of funny because, like, he's always thinking about how no one's a worthy opponent, but, like, multiple people in this book, like, I mean, they kind of hold their own against him. Like, it takes him a while to, like, get some of these people. And so even though he feels like this job is kind of beneath him, he'll never admit that to Sidious because he wants to do what Sidious needs him to do. Like, he's trying to do the right thing by his master. When Lorn goes to sell the information to Yanth the Hutt, who is a gangster part of Black Sun, then Maul also follows him there, kills the Hutt, and now Lorn and I-5 are running away from Maul again. They're running, trying to get away from him, but they have no money. But while they're running, they do cross paths with the Padawan Darsha and her Jedi Master. Darsha and Master Pandora are out, and the reason that they're at the lower levels is because earlier Darsha had a mission, which was supposed to be like one of her first missions on her own, that failed miserably. Like, she was supposed to be protecting someone, getting them from like a safe house, and when that happened, like, they were attacked by some hawk bats and she dropped him and he like died. I mean, it was pretty bad how bad this mission went. Like, when I was reading that, it did make me be like, I don't know if she's ready to be a Jedi Knight. So her master and her went back to the place where this happened because they were trying to like determine if this guy actually died or not. That's why they're at the lower levels. And so they cross paths with Lorn and I-5 running away from Maul. They sense that it's a Sith because, you know, they can feel like the dark side and the Force around him, and a chase ensues. So Maul's on the speeder bike, they're in the car. The car is like damaged and the car is like not doing well, so they're having a hard time actually staying out of Maul's reach. Master Pandora ends up sacrificing himself. He goes and fights Maul to try to buy the others time to get away. And he accepts the fact that Maul is going to kill him because Maul is just more skilled than he is, because Maul just trains obsessively like all the time. So after that happens, Darsha, Lorn, and I-5 are now sticking together. And this is like kind of like most of the book is going to be the three of them just barely out of Maul's reach. At this point, they're going through various obstacles, outrunning various really scary creatures that live like underground in Coruscant. And at this point, Maul eventually, as they are still successfully evading him, he does start to kind of have some respect for them because he's like, these people have good survival instincts and they're managing to stay away from me for the most part. So, like, they must be worthy opponents. During all of this, the Jedi Council is starting to worry because Darsha and Master Pandora have been missing now for like a couple of days. And Darsha's mission, the initial mission that she failed, was supposed to not take this long. And so they send Obi-Wan to go try to track them down. We do get a little bit of Obi-Wan in this book. He's not like a main character, but we see him a couple times, which is fun. Obi-Wan he's following their trail of destruction that they have left behind in all of these encounters that they've had with, like, trying to get through and what is basically like an obstacle course of the lower levels of Coruscant. He's encountering like evidence that they've left behind. And he's trying to piece together what might have happened, but like it's like he's so far behind them and he has no idea of Maul's existence. So he's not really like having any real leads. He's failing to actually make sense of what's going on. As the story goes on and Lorne, Darsha, and I-5 are continuing to try to help each other out, stay away from him, they are starting to kind of like their judgments about each other are starting to fall away. Lorne is using his street smarts to help out. Darsha is getting stronger in the Force as they're going on because as she's having to handle these situations on her own, it's like it's kind of forcing her to get better in her skills and it's forcing her to rely more on the Force and kind of like surrender to it. They're starting to kind of realize that their assumptions about each other are not the whole picture. And Lorne is also realizing that he's attracted to Darsha too. And so this is like what I was saying earlier about like their dynamic reminding me of Convergence is because it has a lot of similarities to me at least. We also do find out too through their acknowledgement of their judgments like not being the whole picture. We learned that the reason that Lorne hated the Jedi is because he actually had a son who was Force sensitive, who he let the Jedi take his son to train him. And when he did that, he didn't realize that that would mean that he could no longer have a relationship with his son. Like that situation like wasn't explained to him. And so he had a lot of regret for letting the Jedi take his son. And understandably so. I mean, I can't imagine how horrible that must have been. But as he's starting to get to know Darsha and he can't deny the fact that she has really stuck her neck out for him and I-5, and without her, Maul would have probably already caught them. And so he also starts to come to terms with the fact that, like, yes, even though, like, what happened with my relationship with my son was horrible and was something that he was taken away from me, it also... he recognizes the fact that his son is in good hands at the same time. As the story goes on, we do see that he's starting to accept that. And eventually, of course, Maul does catch up to them. And this is where this story started breaking my heart. Oh my gosh, like everything up until this point, I was like, this is fun. Like we got this fun story. Like we're doing some kooky, some wacky stuff. And then like when this stuff started happening, I was like, no, it started getting so sad. I mean, it was like one of those things where it's like, it's a mark of good writing, right? Like when you get so angry that like at what a character does that your emotions are going. I mean, it's good writing, but it's like, dang it, it's mixed emotions for sure. But anyway, so what started happening? So here's where everything started going downhill. So we have Darsha, when Maul catches up to them, Darsha faces him and sacrifices herself so that way Lorne and I-5 can get away and take the information to the Jedi Council. She sacrifices herself for Maul. She orchestrates an explosion, which it is kind of funny in a way because this is like the fourth explosion that happens in this book. We've got a lot of explosions that they're just leaving behind like a trail of explosions behind them as they're doing all this. And when she does that, Lorne and I-5 are able to successfully shield themselves from the explosion. And when they do that, so they survive. Darsha is vaporized. Maul also survives, but when Maul realizes that Darsha was vaporized and there's no trace of I-5 and Lorne, he just kind of he's like, okay, well, they must have been vaporized in the explosion too. I can't feel them in the Force, so I'm just gonna go about my way. And he reports to Sidious that his mission was successful. So this is the part where after this, I was like, okay, cool. So Lorne and I-5, they're going to go to the Jedi Temple. They're going to report the info. The Jedi won't believe them, knowing Jedi hubris at this time, and that's going to be the end of the book. No, it was much more torture than that. So what happens is okay, so Lorne wants to face Maul again because he's upset about the fact that Darsha had to sacrifice herself to save him. So he's like, I've got to face Maul again. And he has someone who's like an acquaintance of his that he asks them to take I-5 to the Jedi Temple so I-5 can give them the information about the blockade and the Sith and all that. Well, his friend doesn't do that. His friend wipes I-5's memory and like kidnaps him and like keeps him for himself. That was upsetting. And then so now Lorne is gonna go face Maul. We all know how this is gonna go. Maul and him end up fighting. Lorne is overpowered by Maul. And then when they get to the spaceport, he like runs out and he runs into a senator and when I was reading this, my heart was just sinking because at first they didn't say the senator's name. They were like, this senator has a really good reputation for not being corrupt. So like Lorne was so happy that he ran into him and I was like, oh no, oh no, oh no. And it turns out that Lorne delivers the holocron to Palpatine. And so then when Lorne is like in the hospital after this, Maul comes in his room to execute him. And Lorne is like, well, like I can die happy because like I know that Palpatine has the holocron and like the information's gonna come out. So like my life was like a sacrifice for the greater good. So like I can die in peace. Oh God. It was just like, I mean, we knew going into this book, we knew that obviously the Jedi never get the information. What I had thought was gonna happen, what I had assumed was that the Jedi would just not believe him because the Jedi barely believed Qui-Gon, right? So I was like, oh, they're going to get the information and they're not going to believe him. And then that's going to be like how we end up in the situation we end up in. But no, the author had to make it so much more painful than that. I mean, I would have never anticipated that happening the way that it did. So, I mean, it totally caught me off guard, but like in the best possible way. Because it was like, I mean, it was a tragedy in the truest sense of the word. I really, really loved this book. I can't believe I waited this long to read it just because of how great of a time I had reading it. So I'm excited to go through reading some Legends books that I haven't read before, also rereading some ones that it's been a while. So I'm excited to start this process of going through all of these because of how much of a great time I had reading this book. So if you read this one and enjoyed it, let me know in the comments what you thought of it. Let me know if your heart got ripped out just like mine did. And let me know if you have any Legends books that you want me to get to sooner rather than later. But thanks so much for watching, y'all. I hope y'all have a great rest of your day. Bye, guys.